First reading of ordinance number 2017-08, request for a PUD amendment for Summerview at Wolf Creek Ridge. And Ms. Coughlin, could we have the title read, please?
Yes, sir. Ordinance number 2017-08, an ordinance of the City of Mount Dora, Florida, amending the master plan conditions of the Summerview at Wolf Creek Ridge, formerly named Wolf Creek Ridge. Planned Unit Development PUD to increase the maximum residential units from 254 to 260, providing for legislative findings, providing for implementing administrative actions, providing for conflict severability, non-codification, and scrivener's errors, and setting an effective date.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and council members. The Planning and Zoning Commission approved this at its regular scheduled meeting on August 16th. The DRC board approved this item on the July 26th meeting, and the applicant is requesting an amendment to the Summerview at Wolf Creek Ridge PUD for a minor increase in residential units to add 6 lots, single-family dwellings. This change will increase the maximum total residential units from 254 to 260. There are no impacts associated with this minor PUD amendment, and the overall density is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan. And our Planning and Development Director, Vince Sanford, is here if you'd like to ask him any questions.
Have a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Any comments, questions from council? Okay. Anybody from the public wish to address this item? Seeing none, Ms. Johnson, can we have the roll call vote, please?
Yes, Mr. Crail,
Yes.
Mr. Rolfson,
Yes.
Ms. Hope,
Yes.
Mr. Slavy,
Yes.
Mr. Tucker,
Yes.
Ms. Tillett,
Yes.
Mayor Jerome.
Yes. First reading of ordinance number 2017-10, amending the special events approval process. Ms. Cockcroft, could we have the title read, please?
Yes, sir. Ordinance number 2017-10, an ordinance of the City of Mount Dora, Florida, pertaining to the use of public property, amending section 74.235 Code of Ordinances, City of Mount Dora, Florida, providing for legislative findings and intent, providing for implementing administrative actions, providing signature authority to the mayor, providing for savings provision, correction of scrivener's errors, providing for conflict severability, codification, and an effective date.
Thank you. Ms. Hayes.
Thank you, council. Excuse me. Thank you, Mayor and council members. This is a clarification process, so we discussed this some time ago. Looking at the city code, presently the event application has a history of less than 5 years of recurring activity and requires a road closure required by city approval. The city manager or designee, without going before the city council, can approve events with less than 5 years, assuming there are no road closures. And procedurally, what we need to do is change in the code of ordinance to reflect the new language that we have discussed, which is the city council must approve all special event permit applications for any events requiring road closures that have occurred less than 5 consecutive years. Special event permit applications for events which have been held annually 5 consecutive years or have no road closures may be approved by the city manager or designee. So we would be glad to answer any questions. Mr. Chris Carson is here if you happen to have those this evening.
A motion for approval?
Move to approve.
Second? Second. Thank you. Any comments, questions from the council? Seeing none, anybody from the public wish to address this item? Seeing none, thank you, council. Good. Ms. Johnson, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Ms. Hope,
Yes.
Mr. Slavy,
Yes.
Mr. Rolfson,
Yes.
Mr. Tucker,
Yes.
Mr. Crail,
Yes.
Ms. Tillett,
Yes.
Mayor Jerome.
Yes. And we, some board appointments, community redevelopment agency. Is there anybody submitting a name tonight?
Yeah, I am.
I'm recommending Pat Burke to the CRA. Pat's a long time member of resident, actually in the community. Fine member of our CRA.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So now,
Now, I'm just clarify for me what the process is. Obviously, this is one of the first times we've had 2 applicants. Does someone get back with the individual who said they were interested that we did not appoint and see if they have an interest or want to stay involved to know when we have other things open? how do we bring it to closure so it just doesn't hang out there?
Sure, the city clerk reaches back out to them.
Okay.
They give them the information, ask them those questions, and then keep the record, on record of any applicants who wish to be for future boards. Because we've had several boards where we've had no applicants and they didn't care to be on a certain board. They're very specific in the board, so we do close that loop.
Okay, thank you. City manager, you're up.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. First of all, I'd like to just say thank you to the council for the support during the hurricane, and to our wonderful employees. We had employees who were part of the event 6, 7, 8 days, 12 to 14, 16 hours. Their first commitment was to this city and not to their homes and to their family. They really did a wonderful job, and without them, we would not look as great as we do, and we do. Driving around to other cities, I definitely see a difference in Mount Dora versus some of the other local cities. So I just really want to say thank you to the council for supporting them, for coming out to our dinners, for being part of the process, to our employees, and then the other company or the other major benefactor for the city was the First Baptist Church. They stepped up. We do have an agreement with them. We do service them with a generator, but they again stepped up. We had employees who slept there, somewhere close to the number, I guess, of 100 employees. Our library and lake receptions we were able to feed them at that location. They were able to take showers. Again, they would come in at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, and they were back out on the roads at 5 in the morning. On the other side of that, our fire and police did not rest. They were up the whole night waiting to be able to go out on the needs of the citizens. They were running the roads right up into the last minute until the 40-mile winds actually, stopped them from going back out. And then immediately following, they started making their calls or running to the calls. I think our fire department, it seems like I heard at one time, they had 23 calls, and where they normally have 9. And the police officers even more so because people waited to call afterwards. Our men and women of the city just stepped up, and I really like to say thank you to them. Again, they did this before they even took care of their families. So, thank you. The other thing I would like to ask council to consider, we have within the city auditors in which they perform a service for us. Those auditors are governed by you as the body that hires them and goes through the process of selecting them. I mentioned last year I would like to go through that process and re-look at the current consultants that we have. So I would like your permission to go out and go through an RFP and request new auditors, bring back to you to look at the applicants or the consultants that apply, and select a new auditor. With that, we will have to submit for a 30-day extension for our GFOA, which we apply for each March. That's not an issue. We can do that. We'll explain our circumstances. But now that we have Mr. McKinney on board as the finance director, I think it's an opportune time for us to go out and do that. And I think we, if you will, I would like that as a vote, only because that way, if there's any question. Mr. McKinney, can you come up just 1 second? Just because I want to state it correctly. The requirements for us to notify the auditor.
Yes, if we were to issue a notice of termination on the contract, their contract required a 30-day notice. They're actually slated currently to start interim work next Monday, and based on the city manager's recommendation that she's spoken with you on, we would like that termination effective immediately so we can issue that termination and issue the RFP out tomorrow, which would allow for us to bring that back to council at your first meeting in November.
Right.
And so we would be approximately 45 days late, but if we put in the RFP the time constraints, then they know up front what we're expecting. So if we get everything in place properly, then I feel that the 30 days is more than ample.
And I'll kind of explain that a little bit, because Mr. McKinney begins his CAFR process a little earlier than what you have experienced in the past. In the past, I believe finance has probably begun the CAFR process or the audit process, not the CAFR, but the audit process in November. So to you, it may not seem late. To those of us who begin in September, trying to be ahead of it and to bring your auditors in, that's the difference here. So we will be 45 days from the typical timeline of beginning this behind, but we will still meet the requirements of meeting GFOA requirements by April 30th.
Okay, but we have a contract now that requires us to give 30 days notice. So we're basically going to breach the contract because we don't have 30 days to give?
Well, we would be issuing the notice today, so we would cease all work with them so that we would accrue no more time.
Okay.
So we would give them the 30-day notice and then go out for the RFP. So they're not doing anything at this point in time anyway, so we would go ahead and give them the notice that we were gonna cancel, but we would give them that 30-day notice.
Yes.
That still goes into play.
I just want to be sure whatever we do is very professional,
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
because it just doesn't all of a sudden feel quite right. And I'm not sure because this is obviously the first time we're hearing about it. Have we had issues with our previous auditors?
So we've uncovered a few issues within our purchasing area that has some concern for me, that if I retain these auditors and they haven't told me in last year's process, which we retained them for that I have some suspicion as to why they didn't give us that information in the notices last year. They should have made an auditor's comment that there was some discrepancies, or more or less not a clean system of inventory, which is what we've run into. So that's what I'm looking for, why they didn't note that, so I have to question how solid of an auditing firm they are.
But did our purchasing agency agent and department, were they not doing the work and they didn't pick up on it? I mean, I'm not connecting here.
We changed our software systems from HTE to BSNA, so we changed the software system. But the purchasing did not go through the process as to what they should have done.
So within our own department, we had things that didn't happen
That's
that
correct.
should have happened.
That's correct.
They should
So
have
we're
caught that.
cleaning that up, but on the other side of that, the auditor should have caught that also.
Okay, but that's
Yes, ma'am.
one leads into the other. It's they aren't gonna be able to come in and someone didn't do something wrong to begin with.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Mr. Wolf.
I move approval of the recommendation by the city manager.
And I second.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions on this? Mr. Creel.
I think this is a good idea. I think contracts for services, like auditors, should be reviewed on a regular basis, and I support this.
Any other comments, Mr. Slavy?
Thank you, Mayor. I think when we last brought on the auditors, I think one of the things from an internal control standpoint that I would have as a board member is that last time I think the finance staff recommended one firm. And I think just from seems to me that it should be the council who picks the firm, because they're the ones that are obligated. And obviously, one of the key areas that is being looked at is the finance department. So I just think from a proper checks and balances, that it shouldn't be that there's just one firm recommended.
On that, and I don't have the statute reference in front of me.
I do, hold on. Give the audit selection.
Yes.
Committee.
But within the state statute, there's two ways to do an RFP: price-based or non-price-based. Okay? So you obviously, in my opinion,
218,391 is what I, or, yeah, 218,391 is what I think.
okay, thank you.
Sorry.
My opinion is you always want to have price as a factor. Okay, so that's number one, because if you don't make price a factor, you could have bids submitted in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. So price is number one. But two, when you go through the criteria, evaluation criteria, which is, in the purchasing policy that was approved, and it's, you gotta have the categories, is you wind up with a ranking. So staff will have to, make the recommendation. If there's 3 people on the committee or 5 people on the committee, staff has to recommend what the top ranked firm is. It's obviously council's decision on who the overall firm would be, because per policy, council has the right to waive, bid requirements. And so if we recommend firm A and firm B is 15 points below firm A, council has that right to award to that contractor. So I believe every firm that would submit on a audit RFP are going to be all highly qualified. And I believe any firm that would be selected would be a very good firm to do work for this city. There's so many stringent requirements. You have to have a CPA that's got an emphasis in government accounting. That's the #1 criteria. So other than that, we would just list firms 1, 2, and 3.
And I would also say, we also do call for recommendations. So as each of these firms gives a city and a county as a recommendation, one of the requirements of this team is to call those cities and counties and ask for their opinion and the service and the type of work performed. And that goes a long way, knowing that another city will either recommend. When you call and they will not give you a call back, or they don't even want to address it, you need to take note of that. So that's a huge thing for us, and that's one of the criteria items, as well as several other items over there.
Thanks. And then the other item was, when we chose the firm last time, there was some sort of reference to some experience with electric funds or something like that. And I found it troublesome that the firm that was selected had that experience, if that was not something that was standing out in the RFQ. So I felt the other firms didn't have a fair shot at it. So I just think from a process, just look at that. I'm working off 2-year memory, so I might have some material part wrong, but generally it's just something that you'd want to look at.
Well, I'll get with you after this if you don't mind, and write those down real quick so that I make sure I include that in the submittal.
Well, and I'm not saying you should do it or not. I'm just saying that when the firm was picked, it was, they've got this great I'm being a little
Electronic
you know,
ERP.
when they had an experience, yet the firm that wasn't chosen
gotcha.
was dismissed
Utility.
as though they didn't
Utilities.
have it. And it wasn't in the RFP, so
It wasn't in the
no.
RFP, and then they were selected for that, then they didn't make it fair for the other ones, is basically.
Yeah.
what it
We'll
was.
include the
Understood.
utilities to expand and include
Yep,
electric
absolutely.
services.
Thank you for the
Especially since
clarification.
they have to look at that on our
Yeah.
side. And that's mainly because of the cost of energy. I can tell you why that would be there. As Mr. Rebels went one evening and gave you a couple hours of information, he talked about the cost of energy, how that has to be looked at, how you look at your ROI on energy, as well as how we look at the user fees based, or the user-based fees of energy and electric. So if the auditors don't have a baseline for that, they're gonna have a hard time with that. So we'll make sure the RFP that would go out would include that.
Mr. Wilson?
Thank you, Mayor. The reason I support this is specifically because of the stated concerns by our city manager about the current auditing firm. And that's the main reason to do what we are hopefully going to do. Other than that, I have no problem with continuing with quality, but we can't disregard our manager's recommendations here, so I support it.
But we've addressed our internal problem.
Yes, ma'am, we have.
Any other comments from council members?
No, I was going to agree with Mr. Creel, simply that I think every contract the city issues should be reviewed on a regular basis, especially with these auditors who may not be up to snuff.
Yes, sir.
Anybody from public wishing? Oh, I'm sorry. Ms.
Yeah,
Phillips.
I believe, just to clarify, that it is a rule that we must change our auditing firm every 5 years anyway. So there is a process for a routine change out or changing
But you
of
can
the
do
guard.
two
But
consecutive-
this is
you can
Not
go to-
quite right.
Yes.
Pardon?
Well,
I was gonna say, you can have them 2 consecutive years for two 5-year programs.
Okay, but so
10
there is
years
a.
is too long.
Yeah, this is a unique circumstance. So.
I will be writing the RFP. For a firm to come in at a competitive price, you need to at least offer them a base 3-year contract. So I would write the contract with the city attorney's suggestion that it's a 3-year contract with 2 one-year renewals, which gives them to the 5th year. Yes, ma'am.
Makes sense.
Anybody from the public wish to address this item? Being none, anybody back here again? Ms. Johnson, we have a roll call vote, please.
Go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Okay. Ms. Johnson, is
Are we
everything
gonna
okay?
do a roll call on this?
Please.
Yes.
We have the motion.
Yeah, we had a motion this second.
Okay. Was the motion clear for you, City Clerk?
Yes. Councilmember Robinson?
Yes.
Councilmember Hope?
Yes.
Mr. Crail?
Yes.
Mr. Slavy?
Yes.
Mr. Tucker?
Yes.
Ms. Tillett?
Yes.
Mayor Jerome?
Yes. Thank you. Okay, anything else? Oh, yes, you asked for it.
Yes, sir, just a little bit, I'll finish up very quickly.
Okay.
November 28th, if that's a date for the council, I'd like to move to at least put that on the calendar, and it's something we can come back and talk about, but as a work session to discuss the policies, as mentioned earlier, those would be the purchasing policies and other policies. To begin our discussion on CIP, we talked about doing a CIP review to begin that. And then the final item that we would discuss that evening would be the fire assessment fee. And we need to get started on that process according to what the council decides to do, but we at least need to address it early enough to where we have the opportunity, if we turn in for that again, that we meet the deadline. So that was November the 28th, 6 p.m. That's 5:30 for a work session, please, sir. 5:30 for a work session. That is a Tuesday. And if it works better for the council, we can obviously look at the 30th if a Thursday is better than the 28th. But we got it. So the 28th, we'll put that on the agenda. And then I sent out an email, if I may be so bold, Mr. Slavy, that he presented to you to look at, and that we might want to consider the branding as a work session also, and allow the public to be involved. So if that is something the council would like to consider, we can present you some dates. I was trying to be a little generous on the time because we have spent a lot of time in the room in work sessions recently. So I was trying to be considerate of knowing what date to assume, but that would be something we would look at for October. So if that's something that you wish to do, so I put that out there to you. The city attorney report, I put the information in there on the city attorney's report as requested. And my monthly report information is on there, accomplishments, and the performance measures. You'll notice in the October report, the performance measures will begin to change. We'll be matching up to the FBC, therefore setting the standards going forward of those accomplishments. You'll see a few changes. The advantage to those accomplishments, it makes it very easy to put that data in the budget book. So part of GFOA, when you apply for the certification, is to talk about your accomplishments by a department level. The same thing on the CAFR side, we talk about accomplishments in the past year, and at least looking at them from month to month and presenting them to you at that point in time. It's just an easy overview, and it just really allows you, as Mr. Ralston does, use it for any other reports that you might need. The city clerk has some information on the canvassing board, so I'll let her go over that real quick if you're okay with that, Mayor.
Very quickly, I will get the details, but this year, for the first time, we're gonna have to have our own canvassing board for the election. County is not going to provide that. The first meeting's going to be on October 30th, so we need to think about who we want on the canvassing board. Ms. Hayes has made some suggestions to me. I would definitely be on it. We thought maybe a council member who's not up for election, and we had a couple of other people, our city attorney, and I think there was one more. But Misty, deputy clerk. So what we'll do is, I don't have all the information in front of me, but I will have the information for you at the first meeting in October, and we'll just be asking you to approve what we present for canvassing board.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is not an
Okay.
election. One's not, even though you're,
Oh, I guess I am.
yeah.
Yeah.
You're up, yeah, even though you're uncontested,
Okay, all right,
cool,
well,
yeah.
Okay, so we'll reach out to you, Ms. Gwen, Ms. Johns will reach out to you through polling. She can do that to ask you individually if you're interested, and then she can put your name and reach back out to you.
You might wanna
It's
put
a
it-
fun process, and I'm sorry I forgot.
Yeah, based on her comment, you might wanna look at that too. Because her name, my name, Mr. Krill's will not be appearing on the ballot, so.
I'll ask Mr. Hayes about that, Senator Hayes.
Okay.
I'll reach out to him.
Then
and
you've
ask.
opened up your field a little bit more, if he's in agreement with that. Yes.
And the last item, and I'll,
Really clean. No, anyone, whether they've got an opponent, I think it needs to be whether one or the others, because we don't want anyone to question, and we've got enough people that question things that don't need to be questioned in some ways sometimes.
That was the initial
So I really
suggestion
think-
by
Yeah.
Senator Hayes.
In all
was
respect, I think it
someone
just,
else up for election.
it's more protection for you than, it's just,
It's like policies, like you said, now, just protect the individual.
That's right. and it's politics.
I just thought I'd toss my hat in the ring if you want.
And it's new for me too, because we've always used the county canvassing board, and I've been
County's always
part of
done it.
that. So this is brand new, but I will get all the details for our next meeting, but I just kind of wanted you to think about it.
Yeah, I agree with Ms. Tillett. If you're presumed elected, you have the obligations, all the obligations of having been elected and requirements. I don't see why she shouldn't be able to serve on that. Just, that's my non-lawyer opinion. And I don't know that Mr. Hayes is a lawyer either, so,
He's a dentist.
yeah.
and then, I think probably, Mayor, we have on there changing from October 4th to October 5th as a council meeting night, because of the sponsorship dinner.
Right, there's a sponsorship night, the League of Cities, or the County League of Cities has their sponsorship night on the 4th, and we have our council meeting, and it's nice to have the council meeting, or the council members be able to go to this thing and be represented at this, and to help support the sponsors that do so much for Lake County.
I'd like to ask Ms. Johns if you would re-forward that email about or Misty, with the
Sponsorship.
the sponsorship email, because I was cleaning out my inbox and realized that I couldn't go because we had a council meeting that had already been rescheduled once, so I deleted it.
So if the 5th is,
If I'd like to, have
He's
the
gonna
council approve, just like to have entertain a motion to change our meeting from the 4th, October the 4th to October the 5th.
I so move.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And we'll,
Opposed?
we'll start posting it on the
Nay.
website.
And one, and a nay. Mr. Savy made it.
We'll post it on the website
He's
starting
getting
right
feisty
away.
in his old age.
The final item on there is the lobbyist report, which you see in there. Our lobbyist is, again, very dedicated, and it should be in your report. So he's still working for some grants for us, and we're looking at the Innovation District for a grant. So we're working on several projects in that area, and hope to be able to bring you something very positive in that respect in the near future. And the final thing, which I believe the mayor's going to touch on, but I'll just mention that I am approaching my 1-year anniversary here at the city, so thank you. So that with that comes an evaluation, so I'll let the mayor go into details on that.
Okay, I'll do that at the end, and at that point there, so nobody has to bring that up at a time without evaluation. And real quick on your report, could you schedule maybe Mr. Levy in the near future? He was here at the one meeting, Dr. Levy, and have him maybe just give us a little update on what he's all involved in, and possibly if that'd be appropriate, or?
We'll
you wanna-
do that for late November, probably the second meeting in November. So we're bringing him online with the county, October the 10th. So we're trying to finish up that little bit of paperwork, and then we'll bring him on board if that's okay.
There's a lot of things, and then again, if there's anything he's working on that's confidential, it's gonna be, he won't be able to really say too much, and that's a whole nother issue, so, but what he can do, maybe, that'd be great to make, so we know what's going on out there.
Took the words right out of my mouth.
And city attorney's report.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes.
Just briefly to follow up on the interest rate question that was raised earlier, Mr. McKinney and I consulted and did a little research, and we didn't find any limit on the interest rate that could be charged, but we are bound by the Florida Prompt Payment Act, so we wouldn't ever experience that anyways.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Anything else?
No.
Mr. Slavy? Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I wanted to bring up on the legal item here on the attorney was something that is a concern of mine, and it's just a tightness. I think Mr. Rolfson mentioned it in another item about names versus titles and whatnot. And the way that I understand our agreement with the firm, Stenstrom et al., is that, you know, they're a firm and that they will have a board certified attorney. And the way it's written, the contract, it also then mentions a certain attorney by name, if that attorney left, or just left the firm, and they had a new attorney that met the requirement of the certification and whatnot, the contract wouldn't be clean. You know, it's all tied to one name. So it just seems to me that we should ask the firm or appropriate to just rewrite it to be cleaner so that it is name neutral, so that it can carry forward once the certification's there. Because the point I'm trying to make is that if this moment Mr. Groot quit, they would be out of compliance. 4 months from now, or 5 months from now, or 10 months from now, when there is another person with the certification, or if tomorrow they hired another person with the certification and released Mr. Groot, the contract wouldn't be clean, because it would still say that Mr. Groot was there. And it just seems to me that whether it's, you know, and this doesn't necessarily have to happen today, but I'm just saying it is not a cleanly written contract from my view. And again, I'm not an attorney, I'm not even a dentist. But I just see that it needs to be straightened out.
I have no problem with that.
No, I would have other issues or other things that I might suggest be included in it if there's a renegotiation of the contract, which can come later. But
I don't think it's asked for a renegotiation, just a
No.
notification of phrase in there.
And I too would have a concern that when we had the discussion back in April and when I made my motion and requested these statusing, so we understood that this does not get lost in the shuffle of everything, that we had a certain time frame, and if we need to clarify or do an addendum to it so that it's clear, I do not want to see us lower any standards. We've always had at the table a municipally certified attorney. We don't have it at this point. She is working on it. I understand Mr. Groot is in the background, but Mr. Groot is not, because of all of the different things that happen, is not actively at this table or with our employees, only through, if I remember correctly, Ms. Hayes. I do not want us to step backward. We talk about standards all the time here, and for me, one of the higher standards we should have is for our attorney firms.
Yeah, Mayor, but we cannot add extra. We had motions made, and what I'm suggesting is that the contract match what our motions requested. So if you thoughtfully, I don't mean that in any way, if you just take the time and read every motion that was made and what the requirements of this firm are, and the fact that I'm not saying remove any standard. I'm not at all saying that. I'm just saying that you got to have a contract that's not. We have a contract with a firm, not with a person, and I think there's person references in the contract and there's firm references. I think it needs to be tightened up so that it's cleaner. Whether politically it's better to wait some period of time till certification or whatever, that not my care really. I'm just saying that it's not a cleanly written contract.
we can certainly look at that in the future, up or down, yes or no in terms of that.
It seems to me similar to the discussion we had earlier this evening when we named Jana as the person rather than the title of head of technology or whatever.
See, I don't see it as the same, and this is why, and this is where I don't think at this point in time we're meeting what I would like to have, and that is there are issues that come up at the table at the time we are having discussions. And it has always been my thought process that at our table we have a board-certified municipal attorney. We've not had that because of what has happened, and I understand it, and we I guess I kind of feel that in a way, in order to keep things moving and not get caught up in having to relook at firms and go through the total process, I will just tell you, the reason I made the motion I did back then was to let us move forward, provide this young lady time to get her certification. There was a lot of misinformation, a lot of not understanding what the true timeframes were to get it and everything. But my vision at this point in time is we should at some point have a municipally certified attorney sitting at the table with us, because things happen in the moment of meetings, not necessarily always doing research the next day or the next week. That's just my opinion on it. And that's what we've always had in the past. That was the level of standard we had, was a board-certified attorney sitting at the table.
I agree. So, Mayor, but see, that wasn't the motion. And I voted.
I think we're now starting to second guess and wordsmith what was intended. And if it's because it was transcribed.
Mayor, I am just, my head's exploding. I supported a motion that said certain things. If we get now to after the fact read intent into it, how do I change my vote? I voted on words that were a motion. The motion stated that there would be certain things, and these things have happened. So I didn't vote that there would be a board certified person sitting at that chair. Now, I may have, but that wasn't the motion. And we didn't get a chance to discuss that motion. All I'm saying is the motions that were made require the firm to have a board certified attorney in the firm. There is one. The motions that were made says some other things. So what I'm saying is that if we are okay with the idea that they will become non-compliant when Mr. Groot leaves, that's fine, or if he retires. But I just don't see a clean contract. If the rest of you are okay with it, I'm done. You know, I've made my point and I'm moving on, but I just think you have a contract there. I mean, I'm not gonna be around here in a couple months, so I'm just telling you that I see a problem. I'm identifying a problem. If everyone wants to look at it and act accordingly, that's fine. I think I've said my piece and I'm done.
Question.
I would like to just take some time to go back. I don't have paperwork in front of me or motions, so I would like to go back and relook at this, and perhaps I will determine after looking at it that it merits further discussion and perhaps not. But thank you for bringing it to my attention. I appreciate it.
Mr. Wilson?
Thank you. I don't hear a motion or a second on the table
No, I don't think we should make.
on this issue, and it's not on an agenda item. It should be agendized, is that correct? In order for this council to give it some thought and not, I don't want any decisions made tonight for those reasons. But I understand that what you're trying to do.
I'm not going to ask for a decision for that tonight, and I would like to have for it to be researched and to have discussions in the after we have the research done on it and look at it but the original contract was written by two attorneys. It was written by the firm, and it was reviewed by the former attorney. Okay, that at the time, and Mr. Shepard's office did review it and agreed to all the terms that were written in to help write the contract for the new firm. So he was heavily involved in that process.
Mayor?
Yes.
As far as from a city perspective and what you're expecting the city manager to bring back to you, the data is still on the website, has not been removed, so therefore the RFP is out there, the current contract is out there, and any other information. So for the city to do any type of research, I would just need to know what I need to do if that's the expectation. Otherwise, all the information is on the website, and then as well as the meeting. I don't recall the meeting date, but we can send that out to you. You can see the notes in the minutes, but that information is all available, so, okay. Thanks.
Okay, anything else on the city attorney's report? Thank you for that comments. And we go on down to the communication reports. Mr. Wolfson, you're first.
Thank you.
You got 2
Thank you.
minutes.
Thank you, Mayor. Couple of things. Coming up on October 23 to October 29 is Florida Cities Week. And so the theme is My City, I'm Part of It, I'm Proud of It. And I know that we'll be looking at that, so stay tuned to that issue. And all of us are proud to live in Mount Dora. And to celebrate that in a special way, I think, is important, so I hope you pay attention to that. Number two, the lobbyist report that our city manager mentioned, I want to reiterate that I had 2 or 3 conversations with state legislators maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, and the issue of lobbyists came up, and I mentioned the name of our lobbyist, and to the person, they told me that he is highly respected in the state legislature. So I'm really pleased to know that, given some of my background and the experience in lobbying area, I really feel pleased that we have a good lobbyist firm there, and they have certainly garnered lots of credit and money for the city of Mount Dora because of their work, and so I just wanted to brag about that, not as a person, but as a city. Number 3, I'm happy to be the first in line of the council members tonight to say thanks to our manager, who is the fulcrum of our city and balances what we're doing, and especially what we did during the hurricane. I know I'm speaking to the choir for everybody sitting here. The library, the volunteers at the library, even the volunteers at the council that helped feed one evening those hard workers that came grubby and beat, but they really have done well for us. They've served us, they've protected us. I want to thank our chief of police and our fire chief and all of their staff for doing what they have done. The First Baptist Church, Lake's Receptions for basically giving away the service, charging some just for staff time, I understand, but doing all that donated work to feed those workers. And it just makes me extremely proud. Thank you.
Mr. Tucker.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also would like to thank, which I did in private, but I'll do it in public, city manager and all city staff, just for a job well done. I know when our power finally came on Wednesday, I went out and personally thanked several of the power guys you have that all look like ZZ Top.
Or worse.
They do. They all got. They look like the stand-ins for ZZ Top. And my bride, all of us, the lights came on. She went out on our front porch and yelled at several gentlemen, thanking them profusely. And then I told her they weren't the linemen; they were the guys cutting trees down across the street. But on behalf of the city, they did take the thank you. I also see the owners of Magical Meat here, Magical Meat Boutique. I want to thank. They did a fabulous job. I know Phil put out there about anybody that volunteered and came down and helped clean up Evans Park, that he would basically free breakfast and coffee and the like. And there was two couples there, and I apologize, I wrote their names down, and I couldn't find it earlier this evening. I do remember one of the couples had a little boy named Ian, who was about 5. So there's 5 or 6 of us out there doing Evans Park, and they did a yeoman's job. They really did a great job down there, I think. But kudos to Phil and Kate. And on to the next storm, whenever that may come. Also like to thank Mr. Ralston. I thanked him last night. I've read his presentation to the Florida League of Cities on home rule. I thought it was outstanding. So thank you. Thank you very much. I have to bring it up because I know it has been out there a little bit, and I don't want to leave it alone. There's been some pro and con general comments about the Seafood Festival. Only thing I can say is you can't please everybody. I think the Seafood Festival in many ways was a very good success. It's the 3rd year that we've had it. I couldn't tell you if the crowd was bigger this year than last year. I do know our bride and I were dressed up like pirates, and a pirate and a piratette. I don't know what a female pirate is. Just a pirate. Just a pirate wench. No. But numerous kids came up, took our pictures and everything else. It was a fun time. Enjoyed it. I know there were some people unhappy at times, especially I've seen a couple emails when you figure out maybe 15,000 people were there, and we get 10 bad emails. I know personally that Magical Meat got a bad write-up for one customer, and I've since noticed they've written up a couple other things that they don't like. You can't please everybody. You try, but sometimes you just can't. And I'm sure the next time this individual is around, we'll do better for it. But it's, I think it's the 3rd year. It's growing, and you learn from past mistakes, and you make it better. So that's enough said on that. And again, thanks to the folks out in the audience for coming tonight. And I will pass it on to Mr. Slavy. Mr. Slavy.
Thank you. So I got a couple things here. First, I just want to say that I absolutely love Mount Dora. And when I say that, I want you to know that I understand you all love Mount Dora too. I don't love Mount Dora any more than you do. And when I say the things I say, it's in love. And I know when you do also. What I'm trying to say is, when you're excited about the place, you say some things. When these meetings are over, it's over. So I just want everyone to know that. And a couple other things to the citizens out there. The term of a city council member is 2 whole years. And if you have issues that you want addressed before sometime early November, I'm glad to be of service. I'd like to thank the city manager for keeping moving on the land project. I appreciate that. And also the communication following up on the sewage in the Lake John, appropriately named. As a resident of Lake John, or someone that's on Lake John, John's Lake, the communication was great to let everyone know that it was safe. And I know that there's a lot of things that go on when there's a hurricane, and that was great. I know the LDC is coming up in the next several months. I would encourage staff to make sure that we have enough space in between so that there's time for people to review everything. There is a lot of opportunities, and I want to make sure that that happens well. Let's see. Happy New Year, right? It's Rosh Hashanah today. And then also we won't have a chance for October 1st. I don't know if I'm just a finance dweeb at heart, but a new fiscal year is always Happy New Year. So Happy New Year to the finance folks, on October 1st coming up. We're waiting on the tree report. I appreciate that. Amazon's looking for new headquarters. I know Orlando's throwing their head in. Let's yeah. So we're definitely gonna be part of that. Let's see that. Let's see. I know the employee manual's gonna be coming back to us soon, the employee manual.
That will be in November, when we go through policy, we'll cover the employee policy also.
Okay. All right. I'll make my notes before then. And then the last thing, thank you for bringing it up. I want to talk about the branding thing. The presentation I made was to be made with words around it, to explain things. And I think that's important. And I want to be clear that in my heart, and I've said it many times, the enemy of great is good. And just because something's good doesn't mean that you don't ask questions and try to make it better. That's the intent there. Certainly, having a discussion is important. And keep in mind that that in my role is to advocate for the city of Mount Dora. And while it has many of the same goals as the businesses and others, it's not necessarily the complete set of goals. And so my fiduciary or my advocacy has to be for the city. So I'm glad to talk about it. My postscript, which I had in that presentation, was to say all the nice things that are important to say, but because of the hurricane, I got it out there in that format. But I will say one thing that I want to read into the record. I received an email, and the reason I'm bringing this up is not because it's me, but because it's a council member. And a council member should not be intimidated or threatened in doing his or her job. And I received a letter that I consider threatening, and I think it's important that it's noted. And I'll read into the record, if it's appropriate, copies of it to everybody. I should say that, my presentations are meant to be conversation starters, and I mean no ill intent toward anybody when I do them. But I'm glad to talk about it, and I also have no obligation to hold certain people or to do certain things. I'm just getting it out there, and that's my job as I see it. So here's the letter to be read into the record, received from Brian Young, Visit Mount Dora, Inc. Mark, I have great respect for you and your family. We are delighted to help Annika with her fundraising at all our events by providing her an entire intersection for her fundraising efforts in spite of the great controversy surrounding her appearance in town. We are all cheerleaders for her future success in the world of ballet. In regards to your future presentation before City Council regarding the branding of Mount Dora, I found it impossible to comment. With all due respect, what qualifies you to comment on the matter when your only backup is Facebook posts, which are easily discounted and overwhelmed by the magnitude of positive comments you did not bother to include? I would happily debate you on any stage, in any open forum, in any conversation regarding branding, marketing, events, and the like. I have no doubt that you would be left wanting after the experience. I am certain that you will find little support from your fellow council members, which begs the question, why do I write at all? I'm exhausted from your continual efforts to undermine the value of Visit Mount Dora, Inc. I am exhausted from your continual efforts to undermine the value Visit Mount Dora, Inc. brings to town, and I am amazed that you would allow handlers to affect your keen intellect in such a way. I would suggest prior to your presentation that you seek additional facts. We have mounted a campaign to discredit your main naysayer, and it might prove embarrassing for you to proceed with that particular slant. Fair warning. Thank you for your service. Brian Young, Visit Mount Dora. Now, I only read that into the record because I'll tell you, I got thick skin. I can take it, but I thought about it in terms of if that letter came to any one of you, I would be jumping up and down and pounding the table, saying that when a council member brings something forward, this isn't some sort of anti-Eugene Debs, we can't question why. We can't ask questions, and I felt this to be an intimidation factor, and I didn't appreciate it as a council member. As a person, I'm a big boy. I don't mind someone coming up here and throwing insults at me or whatever. It doesn't bother me. But as a council member, you can set the tone if you guys want to get these sorts of letters from people who don't necessarily agree with what you say. So anyway, I wanted that to be part of the record to understand, and when we have the presentation, it's going to come with the same heart that I try to bring to every meeting. I want this place to be better, and there are things that can be better, and I'm all for discussion. And other than that, happy note, I am finished for this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Slavy. Mr. Creel.
Well, I just want to add my thanks to city staff and my colleagues at the table here. I felt like I was on vacation. I felt like that cabinet member that is absent from the State of the Union address. I was looking after the best interest of the city from an Italian restaurant.
Having wine.
Yeah.
It's called a trattoria.
It was just a dumb accident. But anyway, I really do admire the spirit of togetherness, the hard work of the staff and city manager and everyone, citizens who stepped up, including you guys. Thanks for doing that. And that's it from me.
Mr. Creel, Ms. Oates.
Okay, I'll again reiterate what everyone has already said as we get to the end of the line here. Staff was fabulous, Robin was fabulous, out there in the rain, putting me in the back of the police car. There's a story to that, right? They even took a picture. Thank you to Jim Murray and his wife for helping John and his wife when we served the meals down at First Baptist. The Mount Dora Brewery brought us food. We used it when we could. Lake Receptions donated a lot of the food, so we used that. Lake Cares gave a lot, and Ivy was here. I guess she's gone, but Officer Severson was a great help in getting beds and all kinds. I mean, it was amazing. It was a community effort of everybody doing what they needed to do at the time. Emails coming out, and yeah, Roseanne sent the email and they needed beds for the staff, so we were shoving mattresses in the back of the car. It was really what Mount Dora is all about, and having been here as many years as I've been, pushing 35 now, it's interesting that an event such as that is what brings all the positives to the community, and you can kind of filter out because there's always the people who aren't going to be happy about something. But many times during the course of the last couple of days, I've said to people, especially as they waited for their electricity or whatever, we are fine compared to other areas. We did well. As hard as everyone worked, we got it done, but there are areas out there that they will not recover for months and years from this particular hurricane. And obviously those of us who are natives and who've lived here for 70 years, been through many a hurricane, and even with all the technology and all the preparedness, because it's Mother Nature and the force of the winds, we had all that damage, and it took all of these different individuals we have to use all that intelligence they have to chronologically do all the things. It's amazing. It's amazing to watch it as it's done. And there's been many a day when I watch TV or whatever, the tears come because it's like it's overwhelming what was accomplished and everybody working together, and it's too bad sometimes we can't bottle that. I'll stop there.
May I add one other thing to my comments, Mayor?
Yeah, that's okay.
Thank you. The mistake I make is when you start mentioning names and you forget people. Every director in this room deserves the same pat on the back, especially John Peters and all of the, yeah, Chief, will you give him a pat for me?
Now pat the chief.
Yeah.
Where's Roy? He was here.
And Roy is there, and the library, Vince, group hug is right.
Yeah. And I
So
forgot the crazy driver of the police car back there.
I did not mean to avoid,
John.
I did not mean to avoid other names that are sitting here, and all those that are not here that would be included in that. So it's a heartfelt thanks from me personally and from Shirley and in our home for protecting me. Thank you.
Ms. Stone.
Okay, again, so at the risk of sounding like a broken, thank you to everyone who participated. I believe I have reached out to the department heads with a request to please pass my personal thanks on to everyone. So concerning the permits and the, relaxation of permit requirements, I'd like to suggest that we put a little blurb about that on the city's website as with some example. I mean, I know there's already a line there, but with some examples about what needs a permit, like an entire 40-foot fence, yeah, even if it's a replacement, half a fence, just to give citizens a few ideas as to, what their situation might be, and then the phone number to call if you have any questions, type of thing. Kudos to the whole city and to Lisa especially for keeping citizens up to date with the website. There were times where I was like, okay, I've got 20% power left on my phone. Do I want to go out and plug into the car for a half an hour? But let me check the website before I do, because it might tell me something I need to know. So good job, everybody. Kudos to you on that. The Toys for Tots, one of the dropping off places, will be at the Mount Dora Community Trust this year. So, easy access, stop in, see the new building, that type of thing. December 15th is going to be the cutoff date for ordering commemorative bricks for Serenity Park. So this is a tax deduction for you. I'm going to encourage everyone to, if you want, to leave your legacy, in cold hard stone. Buy a brick in honor of a loved one, or with the flower on it, or whatever you want to do, and support this sort of citizen driven little spot of peace and tranquility. I think that December 15th is the cutoff date. All right, I've already sent an email to all 6 of our combined kids going, this is what your dad and I want for Christmas this year. I'm going to make it really easy for you, 1 brick. And then finally, about a year and a half ago, I attended what was called a Citizens Academy in Sanford. And I was really, really impressed with this. I know we have our Police Citizens Academy here, but this Sanford's program is an all-encompassing city program where you learn about all of the departments from the clerk's office all the way to Parks and Rec and the water and all of that. It's wildly successful. I believe they hold it 2 or 3 times a year. They always have a waiting list of like 40 people. I think it's an excellent way for citizens to learn more about the inner workings of the city and how the city actually delivers the services to you. I think it will promote transparency and answer a lot of questions that people may have. But, sometimes people think, oh, that might be a stupid question. Of course, to me, there's no such thing as a stupid question, and no such reason to have an open and honest discussion on any item. So anyway, I'd like this to ask the city manager if she would, be willing to kind of, look at this and see if this is the kind of thing that the administrator could set up. I found it fascinating. And that's all. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott. Okay, tonight I'm going to just deviate just a little bit here, and because there's a couple things that need to be mentioned, and I'd like to bring Lisa on up to the podium to talk real quick about an employee event that's going to be coming up, if you would, please.
Yes, Lisa McDonald, Public Information Officer. On Thursday, September 28th, we are having a luncheon for our council and employees, and you're welcome to attend as an employee from 11:30 to 1:30. It's going to be at the Donnelly House, and we're going to have food provided. And John McKinney and Vince set this up as well. So we're going to have games out there. We're going to have refreshments, and bring your employees and council members. We'd love to have you out there as well.
Thank you.
28th.
28th at Donnelly
Thursday, yes,
Park.
Thursday the 28th at Donnelly Park, 11:30 to 1:30. Yeah, it's going to be in the house and in the park area.
at our park, not Donnelly
Donnelly
House.
House.
The pavilion.
Donnelly Building.
Oh, yes, sorry.
That's the yellow one is the house.
I'm learning.
You're learning.
I'm learning.
Thank
Mr. McKinney has already volunteered to eat my portion of barbecue because I'll be out of town.
Okay, and I've been given permission from Ms. Hayes to ask Mr. Peters to come forward and to give a quick update on some of the conditions around the city real quick.
So what we want to do is just give you a quick update on Dogwood Mountain as well as Lake John and Lake Gertrude.
And I thought I was gonna make it to tonight.
That's why I break earlier.
John Peters, Public Works Director. Let me start from the top of the hill and work my way down. During the actual hurricane event, we had a catastrophic failure on Magnolia Ending, it's the name of the road in Dogwood Mountain Reserves. Apparently what happened is there is a retention pond next to our lift station. It overflowed, the water went across the street. The embankment on what is basically the west side of the cul-de-sac eroded, and at some point it eroded to the point that it exposed our water line, which broke. So when that water line broke, as you all have seen the pictures and the videos, I'm sure, it's pretty impressive. As you know, as a forensic engineer who likes to see how things happen and kind of work your way backward, it's very amazing. We have reached out to our stormwater consultants. They will be here on Tuesday. Meanwhile, I've been in contact with a company that specializes in geo enforcement, reinforcement of embankment. One of the things we're looking at now is rather than trying to put an embankment back in, which I'm not sure we could physically even do, we're looking at what we call an MSE wall. If you drive down the interstate and you see vertical walls that have the fabrics that goes back, and the weight of the soil on that fabric is what holds the wall. We're looking to do that type of fix in this location. The other thing that we are looking at, and it's going to be up to the city manager, I fully expect that we will come back to council. We have two options. We try to rebuild the cul-de-sac, which we've had, I think, problems 3 previous times, or we do what I call a T turnaround short of the cul-de-sac. It's designed for a fire truck to make a 3-way turn, and then just have a driveway on the safer part of the cul-de-sac, because right now it's only one house. In the future, there could be a second house, according to the plat. As an engineer, I can't really visualize it, but that would be something that we may come back to council on. Obviously, we would need the help of legal to determine if there's any ramifications from that. So that is Magnolia Ending. So where did all the water go? It went downstream. It went across Old Eustis Road. It went into Lake John. And it completely overtaxed lift station 22. Just to give you an idea, our lift stations, a lot of them have with the metal plates for doors. They typically are what we call 820 loading, which means they can handle a tractor trailer. The doors open with such force it bends them. That's how much force we had coming out of that lift station. It was just, when we got there, it was an extremely scary situation. On top of that, right next door, Christian Home Bible, their retention pond overflowed. So, you know, we were getting it from every direction, literally. So Josh Cram, our utility manager, his staff, put in really long hours. They got it under control. We had a lot of people that were concerned about the water quality. We did some testing. Good news is today, it's all good. So, pass it on.
Well done.
These crews were out there, and of course, we were assessing property, so we were driving around, so we're aware. And those of you who are out, even helping, you know, I know we ran into several. Our crews were out there, again, 14 and 16-hour days, and you know, they had people pulling up, and you know, when people are in unique situations, they're not always kind, and they don't always realize that those guys are there to protect them, and that we're limited in what we can do. We've also had some wonderful residents reach out and speak with us and talk to us about it. I have committed to those residents that I would bring back any changes to Dogwood Mountain or to Lake John to this board, the options that we'll have available to us so that the residents are involved in the we were working on it. It was kind of some others who were looking around to see what was happening, that we had to kind of explain more answers to than we did anything else. So for those residents, we truly appreciate what they went through, because they have gone through quite a bit. And we've also reached out to Lake Gertrude HOA, because they've had some concerns because of the spillage from Lake John into Lake Gertrude. We're within reason numbers, as we found out today. We've had some discussions with them. Again, we'll be glad to go out and explain and educate them on the process. John can better explain it, but the process from Lake John into Lake Gertrude is not a open the floodgates by the city of Mount Dora. There's a gravity fed
There is a spillway,
Yes.
Lake John, that has a gravity line that goes over to Lake Gertrude. Now, Old Eustis Road actually flows by gravity to a retention pond before it goes to Lake Gertrude. A lot of the overflow we have was 2 manholes in Old Eustis Road. So we were very confident that the retention pond was capturing that material. However, we did suspect that some of it went over the spillway. So that's why we took the extra step to do water sampling. We actually took 2 samples in Lake Gertrude, one on the east side and one on the west side, because there's also septic systems in there. We wanted to make sure that we want, you know, if it came above, it wasn't necessarily us, it could have been some septic systems impacting it. The numbers were very close to each other when we got the results, and in fact, the number was so low, I'm not sure that it was ever an issue from day one. I've told me to say several times, the best thing for a sewer overflow is dilution in UV. And in the case of Lake Gertrude and Lake John, we had a lot of water and we had a lot of sunshine. So that really helped tremendously in the situation not being worse. But I got to hand it to the guys. We have 50 lift stations in town. We only had a problem with 1. They bought some other ones, but nothing they could have done on this.
And along that line, I think the other thing that they would look to you for, Mr. Peters, is the debris. So if you want to just kind of give a little update of the process which we go through. I will say for the council who you're probably not aware, during the video that Lisa shot that was so really well done, the 214s that they were holding up are these forms that Mr. McKinney introduced everybody to this year, which became, yes, it felt like that type of word. So but those were the requirements for FEMA. So the debris is very similar to that requirements in order for us to be reimbursed. There will be some cities who will not go through that process. They'll go ahead and pick it up and they'll pay for that debris pickup and hauling and so forth. That could be an expensive endeavor. So that is the reason that we suggest we go by our contract, our monitoring and our debris removal, and unfortunately wait out the time period that will be required for them to remove it. But can you do a quick update on that?
Yes, ma'am. I'll be happy to. Prior to the storm, the council voted to piggyback on a debris monitoring company and a debris hauling company. The debris monitoring company is Tots. They're a large international company. They have several offices in the Orlando area. We reached out to them. They have an independent contractor from Hillsborough, North Carolina. His name is Geeter. That is his actual name. Funny story. I like a dummy, asked Geeter how he got his name, and he said that when he was born, he was so small that his dad said he was smaller than a Geeter, so the name stuck. Miss Tillett probably knows where Hillsborough, North Carolina is, so you can imagine what his accent is like. But anyway, Geeter has been on the ground. I have to say I've been really impressed with him. We had an argument over a debris management site. He finally agreed that over by the ball field at Lincoln would be a suitable site. He got DEP approval for the site, which we got yesterday. But we were a little bit concerned because we didn't have a contract with Tetra Tech signed, and that got done today, so we're good. The hauling company is Cargill. We met with them also. The original plan was to start on Monday. The only issue right now is he's trying to negotiate a contract with a contractor in Leesburg who has plenty of equipment. But as of 5 o'clock this afternoon, that has not been finalized, so that will be a very major effort for us tomorrow to see what we can do to get that moving. One of the things that has been of a concern is there was a letter that was floating around from actually the county manager in Volusia County to the governor expressing concern that FEMA is allowing basically states to compete to increase the amount they'll pay per yard. And we have Georgia, Florida, Texas, and so we reached out. They assured us that that was not going to be an issue, but once again, they don't have the company yet. But if all goes well tomorrow and they get a contract taken care of, we should be on the ground Monday, beginning the cleanup process. I anticipate, based on the amount of equipment they're talking about and the volume that we have, that we're probably looking at something on a 4-week time frame. So that's pretty much where we are with the debris management and hauling. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer them.
I do have one question. Does that include the removal of some of the branches that are kind of still attached, but obviously broken and need to be cut off?
Let me back up a little bit, because I know Mr. Lawson's
I just meant
gonna
that
have to-
4-week period.
No, what we're doing right now, we're going around taking care of hangers. For instance, if you come down first off of 441, there's a big oak tree and there is a big section of dead material in there. They're going to take care of that. So we're taking care of the hangers, hopefully before the hauling actually occurs. They will make 2 runs, so we'll have a second opportunity to get the hangers. I think it's important for the public to realize that waste management is also part of the debris removal process. If you push your material in black bags, no, I'm talking about regular black bags, not real big ones. But anyway, black bags or containerize them. You use your trash cans or something like that and put them inside of it. Waste management will pick it up under our yard waste pickup at your normal yard waste days. So, if you just have a small amount, it may be well worth your time to put them in the bags or in a container and get them picked up that way.
One follow-up. Are you recommending that homeowners just call Public Works? In other words, if just to make sure that you have their ginormous branch that's hanging off a city tree
Yes, ma'am.
into their yard to let you all know?
If you have an unsafe tree in the right of way or on city property, a park, or
just call.
Cemetery, definitely call, and Lee and Rose will take care of it.
I might add compliments to Waste Management, our manager, and you, John, for the Waste Management truck came by Country Club Dora today. I think they're coming tomorrow. There's going to be a little more than just one run through there to get it all, but everybody that I've talked to, and I communicate, as you know, with every homeowner there through our website, we're delighted. So.
Well, and let me just say, I apologize for some of the confusion that occurred, because originally Waste Management was going to start on Friday and Saturday. I had the property management company in Lakesham Outdoor contacted me. They had people that had put spoiled food out by the road, and they said it was starting to smell. So we had gotten the road cleaned up at that point. All of our traffic signals were working, with two of the conditions that Waste Management was making for them to be able to start. So I asked them if they could start a day earlier, and they agreed to it. But, you know, bless their heart, they realized a lot of people still thought it was Friday and Saturday. In fact, their call center didn't get the message about Thursday. So they went back around. They circled back around on Friday, and they did a double pickup for the people that won Thursday.
So please, at least from one community, thank them through you and through our manager for that extra effort, because I'm sure they didn't need to do that. It was a step above, so thank you.
John, thank you for all the updates. Appreciate it very much. Okay, let me continue on.
One quick thing, Mayor, and all due respect to Mr. Slavy, the employee would like to change the city flag to a white flag with 214 on it.
I'll second that motion.
Yeah, you had to be at the meeting they had here in this room, and that was down. But it wasn't DD 214. This is something else, and I mean his explanations. I'll tell you what. I guess it's something that's ingrained. I guess they had to carry these things in their back pockets, because every time if they sneezed, they had to pull out a 214, and it was just unbelievable to hear the explanations going on that day. It was just fabulous. So I'm glad I'm not a city employee.
The issue that John talked about initially with the lift station and all the devastation, that would be included financially in a FEMA.
That will be, but his 214 has something different on it, but then there's the discussion about the lift station and all that, sure,
Thank
all
you.
the equipment.
So I'm sure we're going to be reaching out for any kind of federal assistance that we can possibly get, especially for dogwood, I'm sure. So whatever we can get, and that bidding, we're going to be applying for it. And so I assume our congressman or everybody else is involved with us on this. Okay, evaluation. This the city manager's evaluation process. It's that time of the year, and so what? Oh, you want that first? Oh, yeah, I got that too. Yeah, okay. But anyway, the city manager's evaluation process, and so she has an outline about in ways that it's been done. You know, where she's used to, and some of the things that she's involved in, and we've been through the evaluation process here, and we need to get underway and get it accomplished by October, I think, maybe sometime. We need to do this, so we're on schedule to do this. So I just want to let the city manager just explain real quick the process that she's going to recommend for us this year.
Thank you, Mayor. So I will prepare the forms as we did back at the midpoint. And send those out to you, and it also will include the, so those will be in an envelope for you available that night. Then you can fill those out, then there will be an envelope to turn back into the city clerk, and the city clerk and the mayor will open those together and go through that process so that you have your two people involved in the process and so forth. So those would be due back for the 17th meeting, so that they can at least go through them with that process, and then the November meeting, you can discuss whatever you might. We'll put that as an item on the, a discussion item on the agenda.
So. They're good?
Yep.
Okay, great. Last night, we had this city council had another meeting last night. And so I think if we have somebody in 1 month, we get a pay raise or something. I think it is? Okay. Okay, good, okay. And we had another meeting last night. It was over in Eustis, and so we met with the Eustis City Council, and we met with the Lake County commissioners, and along with our council, and we discussed the ISBA that Eustis had put together. And the bottom line is that you know, we already passed our resolutions and things that our council had done, and we gave a counter proposal to them a long time ago. And so we really didn't have to say too much last night, because it was mainly between Eustis and Lake County, and because Lake County is totally against going out for the ISBA, so the argument was with Lake County. So bottom line, after, I don't know, I forget how long this whole thing went last night, but bottom line is Eustis finally realized they were putting their head against a brick wall at that point, and they voted to withdraw the ISBA. So it ended. That's where it ended last night. So that is off the table. However, there was talk about the JPA, and which we have a JPA, which allows us to do certain annexations and also to have the Innovation District as part of our JPA, so that can be annexed in the future into the city of Mount Dora. So what will happen, I think, in the future, probably over the next, I'm not sure when it will happen, but the county manager and the two city managers will get together and work out and talk about JPA, about this was a joint planning agreements, right? And to see what's beneficial for all three entities here, and to see if there's something that can be worked out, and through a JPA system that'll benefit the city of Mount Dora, benefit the city of Eustis, and benefit the county, Lake County also. You know, with what we're talking about tonight about the friendship to cooperations, and we're in a lot of things here on being in the section of Lake County that we're in. You know, we have the Parkway, and which also, you know, we border onto Orange County and right there on Seminole also. So there's a lot of people involved in just this one little section. So I have seen nothing wrong in them coming up with something. There will nothing be etched in stone until, if they do come up with some kind of thing that we need to look at, maybe adjust our JPA, adjust things with them. I think the council and everybody should be open to what we need to do as a regional development for this whole area, and I think that would work out great for all of us. So I'm curious to see what will ever happen if they all get together and talk about these things with the attorneys and stuff, and see what we can bring us down in the future. There's no timeline on it, so it's up to them to come up with something for us. You guys familiar? I don't know. This is the first time I ever seen the cover of this magazine. Will Smith is, I think he's a pretty good actor at times, pretty good. Anyway, but the thing is, on the inside, it's a article on small town, big heart. Mount Dora made another nice article and another good magazine. So I just want to bring that to your attention. And can we get the article put on our website? Yes. So people can see it there. Appreciate that very much. And evaluation, article. I think I covered about everything except for everybody said all the nice thank yous tonight, and I don't think anybody was left out in the thank yous. I need to thank anybody else, but just want to echo everybody's thoughts here tonight from the City Council on how well everybody performed. And I'll let it go with that, and we've had a good meeting tonight, and I want to thank everybody for being here. Oh God, yes, the citizens are really, what they had, they were very super in doing everything they had to do. Motion for adjournment. Thank you.